yesterday. I worked on the heat exchanger, installed the front heat exchanger, ran the tubing under the car, but before I complete running the tubing to the aftercooler, basically it doesn't make sense to do that because I have to drop the gas tank to do the fuel fill, the new fuel pump. So at this point I'm going to swap over to doing the fuel pump work. So basically Science Speed did include that in the kit. It's basically in the bag with the fuel pump. So looking into it, I have to basically work on the interior part of the car first, take a cover off, disconnect something from the fuel tank, and then basically it sounds like I'm basically disconnecting a bunch of hoses from the tank from the backside, and then from there I can drop the tank and lower it to get access to the cover that where the fuel pump is. So let's work on that then. Alright, so basically the first thing you gotta do is work on the interior, like I had previously mentioned. So it tells you that you gotta take the top panel off, then you gotta take this cover that sits under that panel off. So basically it is a little tricky, but I found you can push up from the bottom and pry it up. I'll go on the other side and do the same. I have some wires running to it, but basically you gotta take this panel off, and then you take this panel off simply just by pulling it. Mine is pretty loose because I've pulled this off and on so many times, but basically you can see this is the access panel they want you to take off. So you take this guy off. This also might require your center console to be removed, because if you're trying to get to the connector down here, that's going to be hard with this stuff in the way, but let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take the center console out just to get this out of the way. It says only to do this and this, but in reality, I think you gotta take the rear. Yeah, I don't get how they think you're gonna get to that connector when this is in your way. So I'm gonna have to take that off, which I hate doing. So I'm hoping you'll be able to see what I'm doing here. But basically, I'm gonna go to the other side and try to point out what I'm doing. Basically, I want you to disconnect this connector here, which is for the fuel pump. And I also have a tie wrap here that I need to cut. So let me get a cutter. So I got rid of that tie wrap. Now, if I press this button in, I'm able to pull this connector off. And now I have to loosen this guy. Alright, so I should be able to pry this back. And basically, now I gotta push this grommet and this cable through this and remove it off this panel. Yeah, so unscrew panel, push rubber grommet and fuel pump connector through. So I'm assuming so this is the panel. You just literally push and it breaks this like rubber gasket seal that's on it, and it works just fine. In a way, I kind of feel like I want to put a tie wrap here so that when it drops, it can't catch this edge, because I'm not going to be able to see it when I do it. So I'm going to do that. My cutter, clip that little piece off. Alright, and I think I'm done with the interior. Alright guys, so basically the next step after you do the interior stuff and you obviously drain the fuel tank to be pretty low is you got to disconnect the lines from the fuel tank. Basically, the first thing it says to disconnect the feed line from the fuel filter, which is back here, and the return line from the hard line. So I'm assuming there's another line that runs over there that has a clamp. Yeah, I can see it. There's another line down there that has a small little clamp, so you just gotta squeeze, take the clamp off, and then just pull the hose off. But I think before anything else, really, this should be under pressure, if I remember correctly. So one way you can basically take the pressure of the fuel out is by taking this like test port off. I think this is where you can put a pressure gauge to see how much fuel pressure is in your system. But if you take that off, then you bleed out the pressure in that system. So I'm gonna do that just to make sure I'm not gonna get sprayed with fluid everywhere. I'm gonna guess it's like a size 12 socket or something. Could be 11. Let's see. It is a size 12. And before I do that, I'm going to put a rag under it just in case it does leak anything. It doesn't basically go everywhere. There you go. Oh man, almost just dropped this. Okay, it's loose. Slowly open it up. It's coming out. I'm gonna give it a couple minutes just so any of the air pressure or fluid pressure can push whatever it wants out. I'm gonna guess this is gonna be very messy either way, but it's probably better to do as much as you can now to prevent as much of a mess as you can. So I think, let it sit there for a couple minutes, letting it out. I don't see any more fuel coming up, so I'm gonna just plug it back up. At the same time, I went under the car and removed all the cardboard, anything that can soak, gasoline, so that hopefully when I do this, it's not gonna make a big mess. I also opened the garage door because I think you're gonna want some good ventilation in here. You don't want gasoline buildup while you're working. Actually, I'll probably put the rag under that next, so in case there's anything in that, it doesn't spill. And now that one looks like it might be like a size 17. That one you probably gonna need a ratchet wrench because this is too big to fit in there. I mean, it does look like a 17. There's the banjo bolt. There's these copper washers. Don't lose them because you need them for this banjo bolt assembly. Alright. So that hose is disconnected. Next is the other hard line, which is deep in there. I'm gonna just move this out because it stinks like gasoline. And it's very tight. Alright guys, so what I'm finding is that the rubber hose that to the fuel tank is more flexible obviously than the hard line. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling up on the hard line while I'm also pushing down on the hose, and that's giving me enough pulling force from the hard line to start moving the hose off of it. So I'm just gonna keep doing that, and I think it will just pop off. But I think that's a good tip to share with you guys. Ready to do the passenger side. Now I'm on to the driver's side. So basically what I found is if you use something like this where it kind of wants to stay open, and if you feed this behind the cables over your pipes, you'll position it perfectly for you to get it onto the clamp for the big filler hose. You just squeeze it, push it forward or push it towards yourself, and then once it pops off, you're golden there. Then what I did is I used a long needle nose. Same thing, came from the back, got on the small clamp, squeezed it and pushed it forward, and then using the same clipper or needle nose, I basically just squeeze this and then put the tip of the nose through the two of the clips, and then it basically straightens it out or loosens it enough that you can move it with your hands and get it off. There's a clip here, and I think there's a tie wrap for this hose somewhere back here, or a clip that's in. Yeah, there's just a clip that's sitting in. So you unclip that, you unclip it here. Usually it's like pointing that way. So you just unclip that, take that off, and now you should be ready to pull the hoses off. Again, there might be fuel and stuff in here, so I'm gonna get a rag, put it under these while I'm disconnecting it so it just doesn't spill everywhere. So I just slid a rag under here, so as I pull this off, any residual fuel doesn't, like, you know, pour everywhere. I'll try to wrap it around. There you go. So you just give it a little wiggle, and luckily no fuel came out of that. So next I'm going to try to work on these two. I'll do the small one first. Probably trying the same method as the other one where I'm pushing and pulling, or pulling and pushing. Actually, I'll probably just, because it's bolted, I'm probably just going to pull on it and try to get it to curve its way off. Like basically put some moment on it to help pull it up. And basically pry it off. I'll just throw a bunch of rags over the air filter, that way if anything does spill, just spills whatever little amount there is. So I just finished disconnecting. Whew, that was a workout. Basically, for the hoses that are going to like the fuel filler tubes or necks, you can't do like the prying back and forth. It's more of a combination of you twist and push and pull, twist, push and pull. So like twist, push, twist, pull, twist, push, and you just keep working it back and forth. Eventually it loosens up enough that you can start making headway in progress. What I did also notice is the big fuel filler neck hose. It's so stiff. Like, it's a flexible hose, but it has enough stiffness that as you're pushing it back, if you let it go, once like you've loosened that connection by twisting it, it'll just kind of push it back in. So you kind of have to push, and then from the back side put your finger there to prevent it from sliding back to where it was, and then just keep working it that way until it pops off. But yeah, it just takes some effort and time. So basically I'm gonna now pull this hose. Well, I think I'll take this clamp off, to be honest, so I don't lose it. That's the 3 hoses that we need to pull are now loose and ready. And I believe we're ready to remove the tank. What I'm probably going to do is put the jack under the middle of it, undo one side, undo the other, and then slowly release the jack to let it go down in a controlled manner. And then probably, while I'm under there, take it off the jack to get that extra height that I'm probably going to need to turn it and get it out of there. Put the jack under the gas tank. What I ended up doing was kind of just scrubbing this for now, just in case there's enough gunk on here that's gonna make it hard to remove. I would think that might be like a size 15 deep socket. So 15 seems too big still. So let's try 14. So 14 seems about right. I may need a 14 to put on here to prevent it from twisting like that. Alright. So this is actually a nut in a washer, so don't lose that. So the fact that this hasn't tipped is telling me I got the jack somewhere close to where it should be. So that's bracket number 1 off. So now I'm gonna go to the other side of the car and do the same thing. Alright, gonna stop real quick, take a look to make sure everything else looks like it's gonna clear. Alright, so I went to the top and basically pushed all the lines into that compartment where the tank is, and that should allow me. Is I'm gonna lower this onto the ground, tilt it back, and then that way none of the fuel gets out from in here. Alright guys, so I'm pretty certain that other GoPro I have, which is the higher quality one, or higher like HD quality, is pretty much overheating. It's basically failing. Every time I use it, within like half hour, it just stops recording, and I think it's due to like it overheating, because you can feel the center of it gets very, very hot. So I'm gonna have to basically continue on with this GoPro session. So I apologize, it's gonna kind of downgrade the quality, maybe the audio, but oh well, whatever. You'll still be able to see me finishing up. So basically I finished dropping the gas tank. It's really not that heavy once you like empty it out like I did. So I'm just gonna tip it back and then slide it out and pull it towards me this way. What I'm gonna do is slide this under. There's some fuel in here, but not much. So, that is the gas tank out. You can do it by yourself. It does take some effort, but it's doable, especially if you emptied it out. I would say it's probably like 30-40 pounds, so it's really not that bad once you've emptied it out. Good luck doing it full though, because that would be like probably 200 pounds.